Okay, so we should be live now.
Yes.
That's how it looks.
Whoop whoop! Hi everybody, Tamara here, and I am joined with some guests. And my camera just went out. That might happen periodically. Don't be alarmed. I'll fix it as soon as I notice. Introduce yourselves, and I'm going to tweet out this link.
Yes. Hello, my name is Alexandra. You can call me Lex. I'm also known as Typewriter Belle on all the things. So be my friend.
Hi, I'm Dezzles. I'm known by that pretty much everywhere I set my feet. I'm around the place mostly talking about books and Pokemon in unhealthy amounts.
Awesome.
Alright, just let me tweet that out.
The link is saying unavailable.
Oh, it's privated. Damn you. Damn you. Live now. Show me the thing that is live now.
Let's see.
Then I will edit it and make it public, and then I'll just start the introductions again. I don't know. Awesome. All right, now it's live and it should be public.
Woohoo!
Hi everybody, it's Mary here.
Hey, it's us.
Hey!
I'm joined by some friends. Let them introduce themselves. Oh.
Hello, my name is Lex. I'm known as Typewriter Belle on all the things. I mostly write and perform poetry, and then also read and talk about the stuff that I read.
Oh, hi, I'm Dezzles. I'm found pretty much everywhere by that name. I talk about books and Pokemon in almost unhealthy levels.
Whoop, whoop. And I'm Tamara, and I talk about writing and books because that's what I love. And today we are doing what may end up being a thing on this channel. I'm not sure yet because we all know that I'm awesome at being consistent. I am not awesome at being consistent. I'm not awesome at all. But
well, you're awesome. The consistency aside, you are awesome.
Oh, thank you. Oh, my heart. But I've been really thinking about dystopians a lot within the past year or so. I mean, I don't know why.
I wonder what caused that.
I can't imagine. I just can't put my finger on it.
But because I've had this fascination with dystopian books, I've just been wanting to talk about them with people because dystopians can be kind of heavy. And I just think it's more fun to, talk about it amongst friends. So that's what we're doing today. Today we are tackling George Orwell's 1984. Light reading.
Very, very, very light. Buoyant reading, you could say.
happy joy.
Just the kind of thing you read when your mood's a bit down and you're like, I could make this worse.
I don't hate myself enough today, so I think I'm just gonna tackle a chapter. I'm not concerned enough about the state of the world. I need to have some reinforced fear.
Exactly. Everything seems happy today. Let's change that. So, for those of you who don't know, 1984 was written in 1946 by George Orwell, and it's kind of a cautionary tale. The protagonist is named Winston Smith, and he lives in a totalitarian regime. And the book is basically about him trying to retain his humanity and how that works out for him.
Okay, so up front, are we going to discuss spoilers, or are we going to avoid the spoilers.
I feel like the book is a genuine classic. It was written in 1946.
It's 70 years old. I mean,
If you haven't read it yet, you might not be planning to. And you know what? That's probably good for your health.
We read it for you. So.
I would suggest you still read it because it really is excellent writing. And Orwell was a master at the craft. So there's a lot to learn by reading the book. And, you know, everyone, I think, picks up different things from it. So your take on it could be different from ours. And that's okay.
Absolutely.
Because that's what happens with books.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I hate Winston.
Winston, he is not lovable.
Well, no, not even by Julia, I would argue. Yeah.
No.
I honestly don't understand what she sees in him.
No. No, and
I wondered why she was drawn to him in the first place.
What about him indicated that he was anything other than just yet another person? Was it just written all over his face all the time that he was thinking about overthrowing the government? And so she just had to hop on that? Or like, I really, that whole scene, I really thought that first time they go to the meadow that it was leading up to some sort of setup or some sort of betrayal. And then when it didn't, I was like, wait a minute, what?
Wait a minute, what? She really likes this guy?
Yeah, I was like, no, I don't.
Well, and I felt like this had to be some sort of like fantasy element to it, in the sense of he's not, okay, so he goes on about being old all the time. He's not really that old, but maybe in that society he is. He's only like 37 or 39. She's 26.
I thought he was like mid-40s.
He says in here that he's like 39 when he's talking to Julia, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so there's like that 10-year age difference. And I kind of wondered if some of that was like to fulfill maybe not Orwell's own fantasy about being liked by a younger woman, but like maybe he assumed his readership would get something, like that would trigger something for his readership. I don't know. I could be totally reading into that. That's the only explanation I could make sense of.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me. And the perception of women in general in this book was left something to be desired. Like, women seem to be more of a vehicle for patriotism and sperm than having any actual personality or development.
They all seem to be stereotypes to me. Like, you have this semi-virginal in appearance, but actually very non-virginal love interest. Another female character that stands out, besides the prostitute prole that he encounters, is also the woman who's singing outside of the store where they have the little apartment. And there were times when I felt like he was subverting that a little bit more than I expected, and I definitely appreciated that. But I struggled a little bit with those characters.
It was interesting because it wasn't just Winston. This character O'Brien, and O'Brien is initially seen as a potential ally, and he's not.
No.
So
Actually,
much betrayal.
That's one of the things that I found really funny is that Winston is like, he kind of like a little bit holds himself to be like, I'm smart enough to get away with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's writing in his diary where he can't be seen, and he's sneaking off to like the parole districts because he's like, they're not as observed and all that sort of thing. But like, there's this random shop that's selling all of these curiosities from before Ingsoc took over, and he's like, I will just go in here and buy stuff. This is a perfectly safe idea. And part of me, like, the moment he went in there, I was like, this feels like a trap.
Mm-hmm. This is too neat. This is too neatly packaged to service something that he cares about.
But I think that he always knew that he was trapped, you know? Because there was really no way out. The only way out was in your mind.
Yeah. Until they took away language so that you couldn't even get there.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like that, I think that this is my second reading of this book, and I think that even when I first read it, that bothered me so much, just deep into my every core.
Yeah.
The idea that language should be just stripped down to this mockery of what it should be, so that people aren't able to engage in thought and emotions and anything that's outside of like the state, basically. Oh, I died inside.
And honestly, some of the stuff like they're talking about doing in Newspeak, like, it comes across as like really stupid.
Absolutely.
Like
And
the double extra,
like double plus good and
double plus good.
Double plus ungood and
yeah, and I'm like, it doesn't sound intelligent. But I suppose that's kind of the point of Newspeak, isn't it?
Yeah, they don't want people to be intelligent, because people who are intelligent are more likely to try to take power. And absolute power is ruled absolutely.
Right.
Oh my God.
By stripping the ability to even think a thought that could possibly undermine the government means that your subjects are in pure subjugation. Like they can't get out of it. If they don't have the words to get out, they can't get out. Which is what makes me curious about how they ended up getting out. If you look at the appendix, and it's speaking of it in this very historical way, like, okay, so in the process of that transition, and it kind of insinuates that, in the last line, it kind of insinuates that because they took so long to let Newspeak take over as the dominant language, it was able to be undermined.
Well, my whole... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My thoughts about it is, like, if you were intentionally attempting to dumb down your population, this feels as though it's going to eventually, it's going to cause you to eventually, as a government, fall down, because, like, how are you supposed to keep these two separate classes at distinct levels of intelligence? Either one's going to eventually start rising back up, or the other one's going to drop down. And once your government starts to, become less intelligent,
It'll crumble.
It'll crumble. And I'm just like, oh, too real.
Yeah. Oh, I thought a lot about, like, when they're talking about, like, the basic purpose of Newspeak in the appendix, especially about giving them some very basic words and then using, these different tacked on phrases to make meaning. I thought of, like, people's fears about emojis, and about if we get to a point where we're using mostly emojis or small visuals to communicate, there's not going to be an emoji for every single word or every single feeling or every single situation. So eventually we will lose the ability to communicate those things. And I don't see that actually happening. Maybe I'm naive, but
it's because we're constantly growing our supply of emojis.
Well, I mean, and I do think emojis are awesome. I don't want that to get misconstrued, but I do think that there is a concern when we get to the point where we're using these strict visuals and saying these mean the same thing across the board, when they're not going to mean the same thing in every culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I already find that, like, between different groups, certainly, like, where you're talking about a particular emoji, and you're like, what does this particular emoji mean to you? Like the Facebook smiley, like the basic, like the colon bracket smiley that comes up in Facebook. I know it's supposed to be like a smiley thing, but for me, sometimes when I post it and I'm like, it feels like that little smiley is just that little bit, the way that Facebook's designed it, like content ignorance.
It always reads a little sarcastic to me. It always reads just a little bit like, I'm smiling, but I'm not smiling. You know?
Yeah, it's like I think that's an interesting point, and I was thinking about a few times as I was going through the book about things that were similar to what could happen now, like with the helicopter patrols. I immediately thought of drone patrols.
Yeah.
It's like drone bombings and things like that, and then like the way the thought police were tuning in, basically, well, what they thought was just with the televisions, but then find out that they have more screens that are hidden for, looking at you, whether you're on the bathroom or whatever. I thought about how we kind of self-patrol with social media.
Absolutely.
Like, people check in, you tell everything that's happening, you talk about what's happening in your neighborhood and your household, what you're eating, where you're going, what you're doing. Like, we all kind of self-patrol. And we've all heard of the criminals who have, for whatever reason, have taken video of what they're doing and posted on social media or photos.
Yeah.
Or they post their location after they've escaped police.
Or they take a picture and post a picture of their new credit card with the credit card number showing. And it's like, dude.
Fun thing in Australia recently, random aside on that topic, is that we currently have a postal vote that's happening because the government's like, we probably shouldn't make this decision about whether same-sex marriage should be legalized without asking everyone, to which, like, all of the yes voters are like, but you do this with everything else. But there's been a problem with that. A lot of people were posting pictures of their vote and including the barcode that says it's theirs.
Oh, no.
Which means someone else can grab that barcode and be like, I'm just gonna submit and with a different vote under your barcode and like void your vote.
Oh, man.
Just on that topic, random aside.
No, there's so many things we take for granted with the internet. You know, if I showed my friend that barcode, they're not going to likely, I mean, if they're an actual friend, they're not going to steal it and do anything with it. And so that's what you think you're doing when you post it on Facebook. Is, look, I'm showing my friends I voted this way. And it's like, but the whole world can see you talking to your friend.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I personally have this thing. So I have a friend that works in the NSA. So I'm more paranoid than most people about things like this. But like, I worry about the cameras on my phone or my webcam getting hacked. And so I take measures to ensure that my camera is never pointed at a compromising anything. Or like in this case, I'll unplug this camera at night. And so, like, I think there's so much of this book that has infiltrated our culture already, both in the sense of we already, like you're saying, T, we self-report. We give people this information that they have no business knowing, but we give it to them anyway. But then we also already have this kind of instilled paranoia about Big Brother watching.
Well, and on that note, if you're a non-American citizen traveling to the US, one of the for your visa waiver, so you don't actually need a visa and you can just like come visit for a couple of months, they actually do ask you, and it's optional, to enter information associated with your online presence, including Facebook, Google Plus, Instagram, and all that sort of stuff. Your Tumblr, your Twitter, your YouTube if you have one.
I did not know that.
Nuh-uh. No way.
It only got added, I think, earlier this year. It is notably optional.
Mm-hmm. But there are people who are going to assume that, they just want to know. Maybe they're going to follow me on Twitter. You know, like they're not going to think anything insidious about it. And then, it's like consenting to things. Yeah, me too.
Too paranoid for this world, I think. And, you know, it's even with potential employers. They use social media as a way to screen you these days. It's not just your CV and your interview. It's everything about you, your whole online presence. And then as an author, if you're trying to get signed on with a publisher, they look at your online presence then as a way to see if they want to, invest that money into you, seeing if you already have an online presence.
That's like required now.
Yeah. We live in a strange world, y'all.
We do.
Yeah. My job, I technically work for the federal government, so I technically work for Big Brother, but they had very, very strict social media guidelines when we were hired. We had to go through this like 3-hour training about what we are and are not allowed to post online. And it was freaky. it was very, very terrifying.
Wow.
So they're definitely watching not just the people that, that work for them, but everybody.
So have we become our own Big Brother in a sense?
A little bit.
I think we've bought in, honestly. It's gotten to a point where when he was talking to Julia at one point, and he's like trying to gauge her sense of what she cares about politically. Like, why does she do the things she does to undermine Big Brother and undermine that government? And she doesn't really care about the policy, and she doesn't really care about the stance. She's just like, I don't care what the reasons why they do these things. I just accept that they're there, and I'm going to do my own thing anyway.
That was a really interesting. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
It was really interesting when Winston's reading the book to Julia, and there's that part about how they want to train basically people to just kind of not care and not be interested in these things, and then that's being reflected in Julia during like that scene right there.
Yeah, and she's falling asleep, and yeah.
And I thought that was interesting too, and I had wondered why he didn't notice that she was part of the system that he was trying to circumvent. She was totally a part of it.
Right. She enabled it. Even if she felt like, oh, I'm going to go do these things to undermine my work with the Anti-Sex League. I'm going to go have promiscuous sex. But she's still participating in the system by not challenging why that system is in place.
She put no thought into whatever she was doing. It was all about physical pleasure for her. Right. And a sense of rebellion. Yeah,
and I think honestly that has more to do with it than anything, just from my reading of it. It didn't matter. I mean, the sex part, I'm sure she had fun with that part, but the point of it was that she got a rush out of doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing.
In some ways, it felt like she was kind of like the lower class. What did they call them? Poles?
The proles, like proletariat.
Proles.
That she kind of had more in common with them than with him.
Yeah.
I think I think she was a good example of a character who, because she'd grown up in the society, she was a good example of a character who was kind of a transitionary point between where kind of Winston's generation is and where Ingsoc wanted to get the population to. But they obviously, because they were still in the process, she wasn't all the way there yet. She still had that rebellious urge.
The huge urge.
Well, and it makes me think of like my cousin's generation. She was born in 2000. She doesn't know life without iPhones and the internet and Twitter, and so when I talk to her about things like, hey, we used to have to like ritualistically sacrifice a phone line to get onto the internet, and it was so slow. And iPhones came out when I was a senior in high school. So for me, I didn't have a touchscreen phone until like 3 years ago. And it's just like, she doesn't know any different. And that moment with Julia made me think about that if you grow up in a society with a certain set of standards and a certain set of expectation, you don't know any different. So you don't know to rebel against it, or you don't know maybe how to rebel against it. You just accept that, because she seemed to just kind of accept that this is just how it was and that it wasn't ever going to change, but that she was going to find ways to kind of poke holes in it and to get to do what she wanted to do despite the system.
Yeah, because she rebelled not against the government. She more rebelled just against like the anti-sex league.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was something with like those definitive rules of this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. Whereas the government was very much training people as a more of a this is how you should think, and they've been encouraging it, so it doesn't like it's not really in her head to question the government. But the anti-sex league has that rule that she can break.
Right.
And Winston even like thinks about it that like there aren't any real laws per se.
But
Right.
everything is punishable by death, like keeping a diary.
Right.
Let's see.
No, I mean that's the thing. So I kind of want to talk about the ending a little bit, based on what you just said, T. And so they both end up alive, albeit irrevocably altered. They're not killed for what they do, and I'm kind of curious as to why. I wonder what you guys think about that.
Well, there was the idea that they could be killed at any time.
Right. So it's like the threat is still looming over them.
Yeah, just like with those three older gentlemen that he remembered seeing in the photo, and then their information had been changed, of course, in the department that he worked in, and he remembered seeing them after they had gone through the Ministry of Love.
Oh yeah, love.
Love.
Yeah,
the Ministry of Love, where they torture everyone into believing in doublespeak. But he sees them after that, and they're in the cafe where artists hang out, which I thought was interesting that there was even a cafe like that.
Yeah.
And he sees them, and they look way older than they had. And then I think it was within days they were captured again, and then they were never seen again.
So are we supposed to expect then that he and Julia will meet the same fate?
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah.
And I think for Winston, it's going to happen within like a couple of days of the end of the book. Because even O'Brien said, when we're not going to kill you until like you're, for lack of a better word, fixed. And that's how the end of the book ends, with like
with him saying,
looking up at Big Brother and being like, yes.
Yeah. He had the victory over himself. Or whatever.
And that was what O'Brien said, like that's when you will die.
It's just interesting that they don't die in the book, I guess, is where I'm at, which I guess is unnecessary. Just an interesting choice.
It is an interesting choice, and I mean, maybe that could be a glimmer of hope, but I don't know.
Or just to instill that sort of paranoia in you of you're not ever really going to know what happened to him. Just like he never knew what happened to those three men, never knew what happened to his dad, never knew what happened to, the other people in his life.
Oh my gosh.
The more
damn, Orwell, you're good.
And the more terrifying implication is that, like, the government, especially in that world, is capable of forcing you to think how they want you to, and for it to become a permanent thing that you just end up accepting. Like, they beat the betrayal out of him.
And that he's still going to die. Like, it doesn't matter that the betrayal is gone because he's tainted anyway, and therefore must be rid of. That encounter between him and Julia at the end is so bizarre. It was.
Oh, yeah.
It was. I did not know what to make of it, besides just like kind of a final goodbye, I guess, of them being like, okay, there's nothing at risk now because they're going to kill us anyway. So we might as well just talk openly here about what's happened and where we're going next.
And at that point, the government knows they've won. Insoc knows they've won.
Right.
What I thought was interesting was that while he was in the Ministry of Love, remember the two people from his life who showed up there, and he was totally surprised because he thought that those two people would be people that would be able to survive and live and not betray the state, so to speak. And that made me wonder, is everyone at some point kind of rounded up and tortured, then killed?
I mean, he talked about the purges. He talked about there were periods where, like, they would just literally round people up in groups and just that'd be it. As a way of instilling fear, maybe as a way of just population control.
It has to be more population control. When you think about it, they were being bombed all the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything to him. Murder wasn't a thing. There was no kind of moral equivalency to murder. When he was talking with Julia about his wife that he thinks is probably alive somewhere, but he hasn't seen her in like a decade.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he wished he would have killed her. And she's like, oh, well, why didn't you?
Yeah. Well, and how he openly talks to her about, when I first saw you, I wanted to rape and kill you.
Wait, I have that. I have that quote. I have it right here.
Okay.
I hated the sight of you, he said. I wanted to rape you and then murder you afterwards. 2 weeks ago, I thought seriously of smashing your head in with a cobblestone. If you really want to know, I imagined that you had something to do with the thought police. To which she laughs delightedly.
Yeah. She's like, no, never.
You wanted to kill me and rape me. Oh, that's delightful.
That's fine. Let's have sex now.
Yeah. And like, that's the point when he has that hallucination of basically beating her to death and raping her and all that sort of stuff. That's the point where I'm like, I do not like you, and I don't care if things go bad for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a point of, okay, obviously this is a very sexist character, and Julia has some internalized misogyny going on with her too, and so you have these two characters, and is that supposed to make them unlikable, and we're not supposed to think the author really prescribes to some of these things? Or does it matter if the author prescribes to them or not? Are they still damaging because they exist in this book? If that makes sense. Because we talked a little bit yesterday about putting time caps on T and thinking about. So this was written in the 40s by a guy that doesn't have a really great track record for being like a super socially progressive person.
True.
And so when we're looking at this, I don't want to take a 2017 context, put it on a 1940s book and say, well, you don't live up to my standard, therefore you're bad. Because that doesn't work, and it's not good. But at what point do we say, okay, this is still troubling, though? This still crosses a line from, okay, you're clearly making a comment on sexism and culture, and goes into sort of perpetuating some of these stereotypes that we still see are very pervasive.
Or was that just that kind of misogyny was just happening in the 40s, and it's even a conscious thing,
right?
And it just kind of crept into the book. And now, with our historical perspective, we're able to pick it out and say, "This is messed up." I'm not sure.
I don't necessarily think there's a right answer. I think we just kind of have to settle on it. It probably is a combination of all these things, I think.
Because remember when they go to visit O'Brien, which, can I just say that I thought it was really odd how naively Winston just kind of went along with everything that was out of the car. Like,
I think he wanted he wanted to believe that it was true more than he actually believed that it was true.
Plus, he's kind of got the acceptance that he's eventually going to get caught.
Right. Gosh,
so, well, why not just see how far you can get beforehand?
It just, I was just like, why are you doing these things? Just, God. But I guess there was no escape. But in any case, so he and Julia had gone to see O'Brien, and O'Brien talked to Julia for maybe, like a quick hot second, and then he was done with her. He just dismissed her. And really, Winston was talking for Julia.
Yep, absolutely.
Even though they didn't really have any type of, I mean, they had a relationship, but it wasn't I mean, is it a relationship?
I don't know what I would call that.
For Julia, it certainly came across for her. It was mostly about like the sex.
Well, it's just about the fun and the adventure and the thrill and the secrecy and the game of it all. I definitely didn't feel like genuine affection. And there was one point in the book where, or at one point, something I was reading was like, you know, this love story, whatever. And I'm like, it's not a love story. If anything, it's an anti-love story.
I would not have thought of this as a love story. Like theirs as a love story.
Oh God, no.
Just
No.
because she said, I love you. And that too was weird.
Yeah.
Their first interaction is a note that she passes as she pretends to fall.
On a, was her arm actually broken, or was that all just her?
I don't know. I wondered that.
Afterwards, that arm in a sling is not mentioned again.
Well, but he does say that it's in plaster, right? I think.
I mean,
it just doesn't matter.
It'd have to be broken because, like, if she's trying to hide that what she's up to by like having her arm in a sling, then clearly her like she's going to have to actually have a broken arm or something. Because Big Brother's gonna know if she's like gonna be like that. She wasn't injured.
Well, how did she get a broken arm then? Like, I feel like that's a big mystery. Like, did she get pushed down some stairs?
I think there's a mention of like there's she works in a section that has a lot of machinery.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. She works with her hands.
Yeah, but like, was it an accident, or she was like, okay, I need to get a message to someone?
I'm bored. Let me just put my hand in the machinery and to see what happens.
Like, and she's had a few different lovers, and she approached it the same way every time.
If so, Big Brother's definitely onto her.
And Big Brother's sitting there being like, okay, so we know that like definitely she approached this one guy with this strategy, and she's had broken arms like 7 or 8 other times. Let's just check those interactions. Who has she spoken to when she's had a broken arm?
Right. There's a line that pertains to something we were talking about, like about Winston knowing his death is coming, and I just wanted to share that because I think this is even before he goes to meet O'Brien. It says the end was contained in the beginning, but it was frightening, or more exactly, it was like a foretaste of death, like being a little less alive. So it's like, I think before he even met with O'Brien, he knew, like, well, might as well try, I guess, because I'm definitely dead.
He thought he was dead as soon as he started writing in that diary.
Right.
Although he thought he was dead before then.
Yeah.
Where is my copy of one second?
Existence.
He just kind of always thought he was dead. And then, I have to say, I kind of laughed, and I feel bad for laughing at that moment when they're talking to each other in their little apartment, and they say, "We are the dead," and then the screen talks back, and it's like, "You are the dead."
It's like,
like if my TV said that to me, I'd be like, sentience.
Well, it wasn't the TV though; it was behind a painting.
Right. Well, yeah, because there was a telescreen behind that the painting of the chapel or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know where my copy of the book's gone.
You cleaned up for your inspection, and then it disappeared.
So I wanted to just mention the 3 slogans of the war party.
Yes.
War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. So even within their slogans, there's doublespeak.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is about having those 2 conflicting ideas somehow coexisting at the same time. How is the entire society not mad?
Like crazy, you mean?
Yeah, like insane.
I mean, I'd argue that at least the characters we're exposed to all are in some way, and they're all coping with this like psychological manipulation in different ways. You have Winston, who's this severely depressed person who, even in those first moments with Julia when she's like trying to seduce him, it's just like, I feel nothing. And then you have Julia, who's someone who's sexually acting out. And you have O'Brien, who's power hungry and maniacal. I mean, I'd argue they all are a little insane.
I mean, the implication was that O'Brien was someone who was originally like wanting to be part of the Brotherhood, but then broken by Big Brother. So like, there's clearly some issues there.
Yeah, he's got some problems.
He's taking everything out on Winston, maybe because Winston still has that little glimpse of idealism that maybe there can be something beyond Big Brother. And he's jealous of that. He wants that back, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's evidence of that, but I could definitely see that.
That didn't really come across to me. I mostly just saw him as kind of like someone who had the intention to rebel and then was broken by the Thought Police and then turned into one of their agents. And it was kind of less of a I'm jealous that you still have this and more of this I want you to be better like me.
Yeah.
I think that he was an extremist.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, he was going to be extremely for this side or extremely for that side. There was no middle ground for him.
Definitely.
Who is the character that you found to be the most interesting or that you wanted to know more about their backstory?
Mr. Charrington?
Yeah. He was the guy that owns the shop, wasn't he?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I felt personally victimized by Mr. Charrington.
Yes, Charrington. He seemed like such a nice old man.
I want to know how this happened. I want to know, was the whole shop like a setup? Like they knew, because O'Brien had been tailing him for 7 years. So was this all a ruse? Was it meant to trap just anyone?
Honestly, that's what I thought. I think they just like shove stuff in there that's going to grab people who are like looking to rebel. And obviously, when you've got someone who's going to rebel, you don't grab them straight away. You wait and find out who the few of their friends are first.
Absolutely.
But like Mr. Sherrington in that shop just came across as like far too convenient.
Yes. I conveniently have this bug-infested apartment that you can use as a sexton. Like, it's just like everything was like, and they spent way too long talking about that painting. I knew from the beginning, I was like, okay, something's going to be up with that painting. Because and he even mentioned, there's not a telescreen in here. It's like, oh boy.
There's a telescreen in there.
Or something. Well, something.
Well,
yeah,
because they even had telescreens in the bathroom, and he realized they were everywhere. So I guess he just wanted it so much to just not be true, or he just wanted to have that moment of feeling alive and feeling like a human.
I feel like that's his whole issue, is that he knew all along there had to be a telescreen somewhere. He was being monitored. There was no way he was going to get away with this. But he had these glimpses of moments of, maybe I can do it. Maybe it can be real. Maybe it is believable.
Maybe I can be happy.
But I certainly think the shop was just like a giant honeypot. It's there to grab the dissenters. I'm pretty sure that's what it's there for.
Yeah, it was full of triggers, right? It was full of things that were going to trigger that sort of reaction in people.
It's very interesting.
I can't remember the name of the character that I liked. He was the one who was. I found him really interesting. The guy who was working on Newspeak.
Syme.
Syme, yeah. I liked him.
He had disappeared.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because he was too clever.
Yes, he was too smart for his own good. I was like, dang it, Syme! We need a linguist. Just be quiet.
Yeah, he didn't have that filter that everyone else seemed to have.
No, he didn't. He was one of those that felt like he was immune. He felt like, well, I'm working on the dictionary. They're not going to get rid of me. I'm the one that's like, I've bought in,
It's just like his neighbor.
Yeah, Parsons.
That ended up in the Ministry of Love, and Winston had thought that he would be fine. Like, you know, he was totally part of the system, and he had dedicated his entire life, and he was proud of his children. He was even proud of his kids for turning
on him.
Yeah. I'm like,
they're just keen, aren't they? Oh,
little rascals.
oh, those good little traitorous bastards.
And Winston had thought that the wife would be the one that they would turn in.
Right. He sensed something in her that seemed slightly less bought in.
But it ended up being the husband. And that's why I wondered, is this just everybody's eventual end at some point? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think anyone that gets beyond the point of yes sir, no sir, go to work, go home, go to work, go home, go to community meeting, go home, like anyone who deviates from that is doomed, which that's 99% of the people that had any sort of memory before the revolution.
Or or were they, those two people, were they brought in because of Winston?
Syme definitely no.
Yeah, because he went missing first.
I don't think Parsons either, honestly. I suspect. I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. I don't think so, but maybe Parsons would make more sense to me.
But with Parsons, it was he said something while he was sleeping?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he
So,
still reported it.
Yeah.
I'd wondered about that. Were you just brought in because you had the unfortunate life of being his neighbor?
Yeah. I don't think so. I think it was that he vocalized something in his sleep. Now, whether they made the argument that it was like influenced by Winston or something, I don't know. But no, I think it was just his own being a human and having a dream and saying something while you're asleep. Like, heaven forbid.
It's interesting that in a world where there's no actual laws, everything is illegal.
Right. Well, everything's illegal when Big Brother says it is. If Big Brother says it's not illegal today, but it is tomorrow, then, you know.
Well, no, because if tomorrow Big Brother says it's illegal, it's always been illegal.
Right, that's true. That's a good point. That was so fascinating. So he's a writer, technically. His job is being a writer, but he doesn't actually physically write anything. He talks into this little machine that writes it for him, which is interesting because we have that technology now, and you know, many people use it. I definitely do. Like if I get an idea while I'm driving, I will talk into my phone rather than try to text it out. And so it's like, but is he actually writing? There's that whole argument, right? That if you're not typing or handwriting it, is it really writing?
I would say yes. Just like I think that if someone is listening to an audiobook, it's still reading.
Absolutely.
There's one really weird thing about 1984 that kind of bothers me.
Okay.
And it's that Winston seems to have some sort of extrasensory perception sometimes.
Yeah.
Like he has that dream about the place that he and Julia end up going to.
Mm-hmm.
And he had that weird dream about Winston, which about O'Brien, which really could have been like a long-term play by Big Brother. We can't entirely be sure. But he seems to sometimes just know things that like he shouldn't be able to know, and I'm not sure what the go is with that.
I had wondered with the with him having the dream of the place that he and Julia were going to go to, I had wondered if that was part of his past, if he had been there.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And like in my mind, I was like, okay, so they're going to this place, and now he's been at this place before. She's obviously a plant, you know, and where's the fake police? Here they come.
Right.
You know.
Oh, I thought it was a total setup. That whole situation. I was like, wow, this is early. Okay.
Yeah. But I had wondered. And with him him having that dream about O'Brien with O'Brien's voice in it, where he said that he'll see him where the sun never sets or something crazy.
Yeah, it's
Where there is no darkness.
Maybe that's it, where there is no darkness. And then,
which is a reference to the Ministry of Love, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is. Because then when he actually goes and meets O'Brien face to face before they leave, he says it to O'Brien, and Brian's like, yeah, you will see me there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
To torture the hell out of him, he's like, I told you you'd see me.
Yeah, it's in the place where there is no darkness.
I had wondered if O'Brien had like, I don't know, had said something over the telespeak thing and it had infiltrated into his dream. I wondered if that was like some type of subliminal message that was planted for him, as opposed to him having the dream on his own.
Yeah, definitely possible.
It seems like everything was planted, right?
Right. The whole thing was like they knew that Julia was going to try to seduce him because they were trailing her too, or that just happened to be a lucky coincidence. I don't know. I felt like everything was pretty predetermined. Which and I think he felt that way too, which is why he occasionally every now and then would be like, yeah, I know I'm going to die from this, or I know that what I'm doing is stupid or whatever. That I don't know. I felt like he could have gone either way.
That's an interesting thing that you mentioned about Julia. That when it comes down to it, she was the reason that they were able to eventually break Winston. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why it's now that Winston gets picked up, is because he has that person that he truly loves, that he has that like allegiance to, that they can finally use to break him.
Yeah.
Because he had that whole, I will never betray her. And then they force him.
Got it. And that was like his last dregs of humanity, right?
Yeah.
That is very interesting because he does talk about how it is discouraged for the husband and the wife to have any actual emotional
attraction.
Yeah, any attraction, any allegiance to each other. The allegiance is to be to Big Brother,
right?
Not to
the party,
people, not even to friends. If you have a friend, you don't really have friends. You have comrades that you just see upon occasion. And some people are just a little more tolerable than others, but no actual friendships. So I think you're onto something.
Yeah, because O'Brien's been tailing him for 7 years. Why would he wait this long if not for waiting for a window of opportunity? Because up until that point, he wasn't close to anyone. His wife was gone. He wasn't really super close to anyone at work. He had his own little, dalliances in Prole land. But other than that, he didn't really even have much of a personality besides his sense of defiance. And so they needed something to leverage him with.
Some type of outward signs. Everything, he was living inside of his head.
Yeah. And in the diary.
Where were the kittens and the puppies?
Where were the what?
Where were the pets?
Pets are messy.
Can't have something for you to have allegiance to. People may be you may be able to get people to betray each other, but we will never betray our pet cats.
Right. My cat will betray me, but
that's why there's no cats. They're like, first things first, we need to get rid of the cats because they will betray us.
Big Brother's is actually a cat. That's the secret.
I feel like this could be the perfect time for us to wrap up. Have any final thoughts on the book, and would you suggest that other people read it?
Not if they want to have a good time.
I think people should read it. I'm glad that I read it. Which, just full transparency, I skimmed the last third because it was trying. It was difficult to read. I'm not going to gloss over that. But I do think, especially in the current political climate, I personally feel like we're at a tipping point. We're going to go one way or the other. And we may not see these changes in my lifetime, but if we go in this direction, I could definitely see at least parts of this being enacted. And I feel like it's important as a culture to say, I'm to be armed against it, I guess. And I feel like the only way to really do that is to read these kind of books that take it and make it super extreme, but that also kind of challenge things that we're currently dealing with. So it is beautifully written. I do have an issue with Orwell where he gets a little repetitive sometimes. He'll repeat the same view on things, but in the end, I think overall it's a very, very strong book. Do not read this while you're depressed, because it will not make you feel better.
I think it's an important book, and I think that it's very interesting that a lot of these themes could be implied some way into our current political climate. And I wonder if that's how people have felt while they've been reading it throughout. If in 1976 students were reading this being like, that's weird.
The guy who wrote the afterword in 1961, Eric Fromm, his big takeaway is like he's worried that people are just going to read this as like an allegory about Stalin and not see how it's about us too. So even in the 60s, that closely to its publication, you had people saying, hey, don't think this is just a book or just a Stalin allegory.
It's like a cautionary tale for everyone.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it is. You can certainly see nowadays a lot of ways that it is replicated in modern society, especially when you're talking about like the continuous wars. Nowadays we have our continuous wars happening. We had war against terror, effectively ongoing thing, because like, what's your end goal there?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you defeat a terrorist group, there's going to be another one come up. There are certainly good parts of our government that try and make it more difficult, like at least in Australia, and I assume other governments as well, they try and make education more difficult for people and more expensive and make it like a much harder goal, especially when like it was easy for them to get an education. So it's kind of concerning to me that you can see some of those parallels.
Definitely.
It is concerning, but I think that it's important to acknowledge it and be aware of it. Stay woke, as the kids say. And to do what you can, have conversations about it, like we did this evening.
Yes.
So I want to thank you two so much for indulging me in this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I wouldn't say this was a fun read, but it was definitely a fun conversation.
That's true.
Definitely.
That ended in Big Brother actually being a cranky cat.
Yes.
I mean, this is the internet. Was there any other way? So
That's just my headcanon now is like at the end when Winston looks up and he looks at Big Brother's picture and he's like, I love Big Brother. It's actually just like a cranky look. It's Grumpy Cat.
It's Grumpy Cat.
Perfect. I was thinking about possibly doing this again. I'm not sure if it would be on a monthly basis or what, but I was thinking about doing this again and calling it the Draconian Crackdown, after this song by this band that's obscure, but I just like the way it sounds. And taking a look at dystopian literature, whether it be adult, young adult, fantasy, whatever, and just talking about it. And I think the next one I want to read, and if you guys want to get on this, please do, The Handmaid's Tale. I haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, and everyone has talked so much about the show on Hulu, and I haven't watched that because I want to read the book first, because I'm that person. And I don't know, I think that would be an interesting conversation to have.
Absolutely, definitely. I read that in school, and a lot to discuss. An interesting juxtaposition with 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale, for sure.
So,
It's on my reading list.
it is? Yes!
Oh, no, I've now added it. It's on my list.
Excellent. So maybe we can make that happen. And once we do nail down a day and a time, we will let y'all know so that you can join us and chat with us. For anyone who's watching, thank you so much for coming by. If you're watching this after the broadcast, I appreciate you. Thank you. Leave comments. I'll definitely be checking them and writing back because I like doing that. And I had a great time.
So did I. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
This was excellent. Thank you. And next week, I'll be starting with hashtag Project RightTube, which is a series basically where I collaborate with 13 other authors, and we try to get you guys pumped for NaNoWriMo. So the first video for that will be on this channel on Sunday, October 1st. So be looking forward to that. And other stuff's going to be coming out on the horizon. I have a lot of things planned. And what does it say?
What is that?
It's my planning board.
Yeah.
You brave souls. Brave souls. I'll be working on my poetry book, but I'll be looking for waving.
I'm actually involved in a writing challenge for poetry for October.
Yep.
Called OctoWriMo.
Yep.
Anyone's interested in that, I'm doing all the writing things. It all happens within like 60 days, so I should be good and crazy by December.
My October is dedicating to getting ready for 13 Days, 13 Shorts, which it's basically, it starts, I think, in 2 days' time. No, tomorrow, I thought. Wait, what's the date for you?
The date for us is the 29th still.
So 2 days' time, because it starts October in American. And basically it's run by a guy named Omar, and it's the last 13 days of October each have a different theme to them. And people during like the lead up to those dates can work on different forms of media, so writing, videos, those sorts of things, to basically go up during those days.
Super Geeks!
Yes!
Yes! Yay! Oh, I'm so excited. In my heart, I want to participate that, but I know I'm not going to.
You've already got so much going on, T. Like,
yeah, but every year I'm like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. So
you're doing poetry.
Be participating. I can like live through what you're doing.
You could be your poetry though.
Just make some of your poetry about it, like a couple of the themes. Go for the double whammy.
All right, you guys have got me thinking now. I am so glad that we had this conversation. I'm glad that we had this end of the road conversation. Thank you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.